Hello, dear friends. Floods, fires, and revolutions almost everywhere. Worldwide chaos. This is too much and doesn't seem real, but a scenario out of an apocalyptic movie. There is no doubt that this is the biblical Great Tribulation. Too much information to process and assimilate. Opinion piece. Watch the water. Water is flooding Europe. Pray for those who lost their homes or their lives. Germany declares a state of military catastrophe. Floods increase in Western Europe. More than 100 citizens have perished in Germany. Flooding is occurring in Europe, India, Russia, and China. German soldiers are helping firefighters. Belgium sets a day of mourning after 20 deaths in floods. Emirates triggers heavy artificial rainfall with new technology. Today's sunset marks Jewish people's worst day, Tisha B'Av. These floods coincide with the rise of Syrian, according to Parisse Deza. Coincides with Nile floods in ancient Egypt in July and August. The 5 Chinese elders left the July 14 meeting without agreement. Junk bond yields have fallen below inflation rate. Air Force facilities become US Space Force facilities. Anti-censorship tool helps 1.4 million Cubans access the internet. Let's start. Do you remember that enigmatic phrase, "watch the water," issued by the round letter? Watch means to observe something or someone carefully and attentively and be ready for action. At first it seemed like an ominous warning, but now we have the explanation for drop number 765. At the time, instead of watching the water, hasty conclusions were speculated, such as a supposed tsunami in New York, or that this should have something to do with North Korea. There was also speculation about a missile against Hawaii supposedly launched from a submarine on January 13, 2018, or that a supposed KGB agent revealed that there was an imaginary plan to poison tap water. There were many interpretations and blah blah blah, but no one seemed to have gotten it right until we now see it in the past and present bull. That was like trying to interpret a book of alchemical symbols without having the keys. In my opinion, this is not a climate change, but a climate warfare. Also, this month we are in my warrior sign of the crab, which purifies everything with running water, while the scorpion sign symbolizes the stagnant water of a swamp, and the fish sign the fine drizzle of the cells, with the pretty music of a melancholy bagpipe playing in the landscape. Wars come and go, and people lose friends, while billionaires get richer, as planned. Nothing serves them better than foot soldiers who think they are doing the right thing. The hacks who explain that the good guys are winning and ask us for more patience give the impression that the white, black or grey hats are using us in a disinformation war, and some are just good people trying to help, but they don't want us to know everything because the war is based on deception. Flooding. Water is flooding Europe. It seems to be flooding everything, from south to north. Soon there are also videos from Bremen, Hamburg, Lübeck. Below Hagen and Dortmund are the largest air raid shelters in the world, and also what you already know. Floods continue to rise in Western Europe, with the death toll over 120. German authorities feared more deaths on Friday after catastrophic floods swept through western regions, demolished streets and houses, killed more than 100 people, and left hundreds more missing and homeless. People can't get to work properly. Soldiers are helping firefighters. Stores and basements are full of water. Cars have been washed away. Germany declares state of military catastrophe. Germany's Federal Ministry of Defense declared Friday a state of military catastrophe after heavy rains and flood caused by Cyclone Bernd, which hit the west of the country since Monday and already left more than 100 dead. The measure allows the military to take urgent decisions. Belgium's sets day of mourning after 20 deaths in floods. Belgium declared a national day of mourning next week as the death toll from overflowing rivers and flash floods in the south and east of the country rose to 20 on Friday, with another 20 missing. Roads have turned into rivers. Terrible flooding in Liege, Belgium. Netherlands. Thousands of Dutch urged to leave their homes as rivers burst their banks. Thousands of people in the southern Netherlands were urged Thursday to leave their homes quickly to escape flooding as rivers were on the verge of bursting their banks. Flooding increases in Tucson, Arizona, USA, due to heavy downpours. There are floods in Europe, India, Russia, and China, where the world's largest Three Gorges Dam was about to break. Abnormal heat and fires in Canada, the western US, and Central Asian countries. There were major floods, with NASA said were caused by the moon, across Europe, in the subways of Arizona, Germany, Belgium, Haiti, Moscow, London, and New York, plus cracks in China's Three Gorges Dam. Fires in the western US and Algeria. Massive fires have occurred in Algeria during the last few days. Port-au-Prince, Haiti, tons of plastic in street water. Moscow airport flooded. Planes unable to land at airfield with runways underwater. Thursday's storm comes after a heat wave was kept temperatures consistently above 30 degrees centigrade for more than a week in the Russian capital. South Africa. At least 72 people were killed and 1,234 arrested in rioting and looting in South Africa, which began over the weekend in KwaZulu-Natal province and spread to Johannesburg. UAE triggers heavy artificial rainfall with new technology amid near 50-degree heat wave. Heavy rains have fallen on Wednesday and Thursday in several regions of the United Arab Emirates, including Abu Dhabi, Dubai, and Sharjah, amid a heat wave with extreme temperatures bordering 50 degrees. The National Meteorological Center explained that cloud seeding operations were carried out in order to increase rainfall. Protests. French, Cuban, and South African revolutions are taking place. Excuse me. Protests in Italy, Germany, Greece, US cities, Canadian cities, South American cities, Middle East, Australia, France, London, Cuba, South Africa, Dublin, Ireland, cyber attacks on major banks, and in the UK, military helicopters will be visible in the sky both day and night all next week. Trudeau vulnerable on indigenous policies. The discovery of hundreds of indigenous children's graves, highlighting Canada's mistreatment of First Nations, has dominated the campaign ahead of a likely election and is an issue on which Canadian Liberal Prime Minister Justin Trudeau is vulnerable. Analysts and Indigenous advocates say Canadian Catholic churches were touched where mass graves of the more than 500,000 missing Native children were found. There were earthquakes, volcanic eruptions, a civil war in South Africa, mass protests in Cuba, and thousands marched against restrictions in Europe, all of which seem to lead to the activation of the emergency broadcast system. On Tuesday, July 13, Trump opined that, in quotes, both Iran and its people want nuclear World War III to begin in order to fulfill Islamic prophecies that bring down the great Satan of America, and the little Satan of Israel would become Iran again, and the one world Islamic order would be completed. In Israel, sunset today, Saturday, July 17th, marks the beginning of Tisha B'Av, which is the most calamitous day in the history of the Hebrew people, of the tribe of Judah in particular. Rise of Syria. Sirius. Parisse Deza takes a look from Syria to the Lion's Gate and the Egyptians. The ancient Egyptians celebrated the season of Sirius from July 3rd to August 12th, when the Nile flooded the surrounding plains, giving life to the fertile land, and the heliacal rising of Sirius, which took place at the end of the season and was the climax. The word heliacal is formed for the Greek name Helios, meaning the sun. The day on which a star or planet rises exactly with the sun is a conjunction, but since we cannot see that star or planet because the light from the sun is too bright, we must wait for it to rise in front of the sun before we can see it. The day it becomes visible is the day of its heliacal rising, and that is what we are celebrating. For the Egyptians, this was the beginning of the new year. It coincides approximately with August 8th of each year. The date, in fact, is in constant motion, because the stars and planets are in constant motion. For the Egyptians of 1350 before Christ, Sirius had its heliacal rising around July 19th. Sirius now, in conjunction with the Sun on August 3rd, reaches its heliacal rising on August 15 or 16, depending on where you are. The entire Syrian season is so important that the Declaration of Independence was signed on July 4th to coincide with the start of it. The Masons were instrumental in shaping America before the society became corrupt, because they were serious lovers. Even if one is not a Mason, one can appreciate the spiritual impact of this, because it is now scientifically known that the natural pulse emitting from the human brain literally synchronizes with the pulse coming from the human heart, which synchronizes with the pulse coming from the earth, which synchronizes with the pulse coming from the sun, and which in turn synchronizes with the pulse coming from Sirius. We are intimately involved with whatever Sirius is doing in the universe. This makes it all the more important that you time your ceremony or meditation with the actual heliacal rising and synchronize your heart-mind with Sirius and the beyond. The true spiritual path passes through emptiness of attachment, not emptiness of consciousness. Take the time to align yourself with the celestial events that are actually happening, and you will make a positive difference in human consciousness. Practice having awareness to increase consciousness. Do not be distracted. Focus on the actual Hellenic rising of Sirius, August 15th, 16th, and the Egyptians will be proud of you. The Aquarian age and the new great year began in 1998. Since 1962, Earth and humanity have been on a massive 72 years transit throughout the degree of space that aligns our sun at the winter solstice with the ecliptic, the ring of our solar system, where it forms a cross with the Milky Way, the galactic edge, at the center of our galaxy in the dark rift, a powerful, eerie, mystical zone with new stars. This transit took place exactly on December 21, 2012. In fact, it began in 1962 and will end in 2034. Its midpoint was May 17th, 1998, making 2012 just one of 72 times that our sun has transited the center of the galaxy. Reset news. The Storm Radar opines that the military already controls 80% of the planet. The dark side is creating all the disasters we see right now. The chaos we see is allowed by the military so that the bad guys made mistakes that lead to the exposure of their sleeper cells and intermediate links in the chain of command. But the hammer is about to fall, according to Rafabal. South Dakota has already moved ahead of the future by abolishing state taxes, business taxes, and private property taxes. The world is waking up to corruption as the dark side meets and negotiates its surrender to the coalition behind closed doors. Opines the X22 report that the only reason the dark side still has power and can still function is because of their allies in the media, social media corporations, Hollywood, sports, and all the other amplifiers that people still trust. But the truth can no longer be stopped. All the demonstrations in London, France, and Greece, all the uprisings like in South Africa and Cuba, are still deliberately allowed. The peoples are tired of doing what the dictators tell them to do. They show the middle finger to the old world order and all over the world, because everyone just wants peace, freedom, sovereignty, and to live as they want, not as dictated by a state, a religion, or a self-proclaimed elite. The coalition still allows all this chaos because it makes it more acceptable for a military takeover. So these uprisings really tell us only one thing: We are in the flow. Chinese elders. North Korea and Cuba are no longer in the first basket, which was now composed of the new gold and asset-backed currencies of 23 countries. The second basket would take place sometime in October 2021. Chinese elders walked out of the 11 p.m. meeting on Wednesday, July 14th, on the currency realignment because the prosperity packages had not been addressed. The famous Chinese elders are composed of different multi-generational Chinese families living in the Philippines who, for centuries, owned and were responsible for about 90% of the world's gold, lending it to countries for the establishment of their financial systems. There are 5 main Chinese elders who are responsible for the financial reset and the release of funds for the currency reset. Mike Hayden states that this will happen very soon, so stop worrying about when. We have inside knowledge of that unfolding. We will have whatever it takes at exactly the right time to do what we came here to do, which is our life mission. We sense who is trying to inspire us and who is trying to deceive us. When the time is right, we will be ready to react in whatever direction is necessary to achieve the desired outcome for the greater good. Faith, trust, and patience are the tools we have to complete what we set out to do with our hearts and minds. Military news. There was a leak of information from Biden administration staffers' personal email revealing how he used the military to secretly move illegal aliens around the country. Fox News' Tucker Carlson revealed that a leaked email showed that the military was secretly moving illegal aliens around the country from Laughlin Air Force Base in Texas. In quotes, "Do not take photographs and do not post anything on social media," the email said. A group of Air Force B-52H strategic bomber airmen and support equipment from Minot Air Force Base, North Dakota, deployed to Anderson Air Force Base 1 July 15 in support of the Pacific Air Force's Bomber Task Force. The U.S. Army will fire a Patriot missile for the first time in Australia during exercise Talisman Sabre 21. A combined task force of 17,000 US, Australian, New Zealand, Japanese, South Korean, and British soldiers kicked off the biennial Talisman Sabre drills Wednesday in Australia. NSA goes to war with FBI for illegally spying on Americans. The National Security Agency is going to war with the Federal Bureau of Investigation over the Fourth Amendment and warrantless surveillance of the citizens. In a recent letter, the NSA agreed to disclose a trove of FBI records. These records prove that the FBI conducted an illegal spying operation that violated the privacy of 16,000 Americans. Air Force installations officially changed their name to Space Force stations, and even command changes where the Air Force Lieutenant Colonel relinquishes command to a Space Force Lieutenant Colonel. South Africa's military forces will increase to 25,000 personnel to combat looting and violence in parts of the country. largest military deployment since the end of apartheid. Russian Defense Ministry denounces cyber attack against its website. The Russian Defense Ministry denounces a cyber attack from abroad against its website. The site was unavailable for hours, although access has now been restored. A day earlier, a similar attack had been carried out against the governmental pages at the Russian region of Crimea. The US launches a website to deal with ransomware cyber attacks. The government unveiled Thursday a website that centralizes the response of the various federal agencies to possible cyber attacks after several companies have been affected by ransomware programs in recent months. Biden fights Russian hacking groups. The US on Friday took another step on Russia's cybersecurity industry, restricting trade with 4 information technology companies and 2 other entities for aggressive and harmful activities, including digital espionage, from which Washington blames the Russian government. Ibero-America. Censorship circumvention tool helps 1.4 million Cubans access Internet. Psiphon Inc.'s freely available Internet censorship circumvention tool has helped nearly 1.4 million Cubans this week gain access to websites. The company said Friday after Cuba's government restricted access to popular social networking and messaging platforms. Florida residents on their boats organized marches with food and supplies to help protesters advocating for democracy in Cuba. According to CBS Miami, a large group of boats with food, water, and medicine headed to the island on Monday. Cuban protesters in Tampa Bay, Florida, block highways and shout, "If Cuba is in the streets, Tampa is too." Cuba's economy minister announces transformation of state enterprise. Cuba's economy minister, Alejandro Gil, announced changes in the country's wage policies as part of a far-reaching transformation in the state enterprise sector. Colombian police say ex-Haitian official suspected of ordering attack. Former Haitian Justice Ministry official Joseph Felix Badio may have ordered the assassination of Haitian President Jovenel Moise, a Colombian police chief said Friday, citing a preliminary investigation into the murder. Former Haitian President Jean-Bertrand Aristide returns to Haiti. Former Haitian President Jean-Bertrand Aristide returned to the nation on Friday after spending more than a month in Cuba, where he received medical treatment. Aristide was greeted by hundreds of supporters upon his arrival at the Port-au-Prince International Airport. U.S. not planning to send troops to Haiti for now. President Biden on Thursday appeared to rule out the possibility of sending U.S. troops to Haiti to stabilize the Caribbean nation following the assassination of President Jovenel Moise. Argentine justice charges Macri and 2 former ministers for allegedly sending arms to Bolivia. Former Argentine President Mauricio Macri and several high-ranking officials during his term have been charged for allegedly sending arms to Bolivia following the coup against Evo Morales in November 2019. Bolsonaro recovers. Brazilian President Jair Bolsonaro, who is undergoing hospital treatment for an intestinal obstruction, said Friday he hoped to be back in action soon, while doctors have yet to give a date for his discharge. Earthquake of magnitude 5.2 felt in the Peruvian Amazon. An earthquake of magnitude 5.2 on the Richter scale was felt Friday in the northern Peruvian Amazon, with no casualties or material damage reported for the moment. Stray dogs rescued by the Mexican army find homes and jobs, and an occupied kindergarten was transformed into a shelter for stray dogs near an international airport under construction in Zumpampo de Ocampo, on the outskirts of Mexico City. Finance. Global sustainable debt issuance to surpass 1 billion mark by 2021. Global sustainable debt issuance is on track to surpass 1 billion this year, with green bonds dominating, while emerging markets have some catching up to do, the Institute of International Finance said. A financial black hole opens up, according to Lynette Thang. The unthinkable has just happened. Junk bond yields have fallen below the official inflation rate. This historic drop shows that the system is almost dead. Junk bonds are issued by vulnerable companies. Usually, people buy them because they pay more, since you take more risk. Well, now, even assuming a young company survives the economy reboot, it has agreed to take a loss of purchasing power. In other words, although the nominal rate remains positive, 4.5% on average, the real rate of return is officially negative, as inflation registered 5.4%, more than 4.5 point more. This is how central banks have managed the markets since 2008. But now the plumbing of the financial system may be in trouble once again. It is a growing experiment called the Reverse Repurchase Program, created in 2013 to absorb excess liquidity caused by quantitative easing, in order to put a floor on interest rates under pressure from massive amount of cash in the system, and it is likely to get worse. United States. Biden to reappoint Jerome Powell as Fed chairman. President Biden will reappoint current Federal Reserve Chairman Jerome Powell to a second 4-year term starting in February next year, according to an overwhelming majority of economists polled by Reuters this week. FDA investigating carcinogen found in sunscreen products. The Food and Drug Administration said Friday it is investigating the root cause of a cancer-causing chemical found in some of Johnson & Johnson's recalled sunscreen products. Reuters journalist killed covering clash between Afghan and Taliban forces. Reuters journalist Danish Siddiqui was killed on Friday while covering a clash between Afghan security forces and Taliban fighters near a border crossing with Pakistan, an Afghan commander said. Taliban Afghan officials agree ceasefire. Local and Taliban leaders agreed Thursday to a ceasefire in the western Afghan province of Baghdad, whose capital, Kuala Lumpur, has been under attack for several days by insurgents who are waging a wide-ranging offensive in the country. And that's all for today. Thanks a lot, dear friends.